guys, Brian Salter here, and today I've had about 4 emails, not all today, but in the last couple weeks, I've had about 4 emails requesting that I do a pushrod valve geometry video, simplifying it, whatever we can do to help you understand. It's not rocket science. It's extremely easy. There are some do's and don'ts, and today I'm going to show you those. How to find the right pushrod length when you're using a stud mount. How long should your stud be? Thread engagement. And whenever you're understanding the difference that when you're using stud mount rockers versus a shaft system. On the shaft system, you're setting the entire platform to get your valve tip to valve, roller tip to valve interaction, versus when you're using a stud mount rocker, you are using the push rod to adjust that interaction, and when to use last caps. Okay, stay tuned. All right, everybody, before you watch the video, this video was made with the thought process that you have the correct rocker arm for your cylinder head, and I feel like I need to throw that in. So that's why I made a revision to this. Look, when you purchase a cylinder head, make sure you get the rocker arm that goes with that cylinder head. The reason being, sometimes when we do these different valve angles and different head angles and things, sometimes they can move the valve much further away from your actual tied down point for the shaft or the stud mounted rocker. So not all things are equal, so make sure if you buy a particular head from a particular manufacturer that you get the right rocker arm for that head. Now, I ain't talking about ratio when I say that. I'm talking about the length, so that it fits the cylinder head correctly. And then the rest of this is about just setting up your push rod length. It's not difficult, and I hear all these rocket scientists, but it's not difficult, man. Anyways, let's see what else. Oh yeah, and when I talk about using a lash cap, I'm referring to if you're running high RPM tiny valves with high lift. Obviously, you got 7mm valves out there running around all over the place. But if you're running 750, 800, 900, an inch lift, we highly recommend lash caps. You got to keep your valve lash set with them. You got to have a good radius on the top of the valve stem. Can't put a corner in a corner. And get a quality lash cap. Okay, Exeldyne, Del West, somebody like that. He makes a good quality lash cap. All right, enjoy the video. Okay, so what I hope to demonstrate to you today is the importance of valve train geometry and also your rocker arm stud thread engagement. So here's a rule of thumb in the machinist world, okay? Whenever you want to know how far in should a bolt go into a hole, or how far in should the rocker arm adjustment nut actually be put on the stud, well, here's the answer. Whatever the diameter is of the bolt or the stud, the threaded object, you need to be engaged for maximum strength twice the diameter. Okay, that is in your machinist handbook. If you don't have one of those, I learned that in college years ago. But twice the diameter is the thread engagement that I would like to have for maximum strength. Anything more than twice the diameter, it's not holding any tighter or any stronger. But anything less than twice the diameter, it is. Now, that's not to say that you need to have exactly twice the diameter on every rocker arm nut, but you certainly don't want to be on there with 3 or 4 threads, right? I mean, come on, guys. Some of these springs are very, very strong, and you'll just rip the threads right off. So this is a short stock big block Chevy stud. The ones that I installed, due to the valve lift and the installed valve stem height, right? The valve is longer, is 3/8 longer than these. So it's 375 thousandths longer. If you take that to 375, that much longer is what I installed, and they work perfectly. So make sure that when your cam is on the base circle, that you got more than a couple threads there, because that is very, basically you're going to blow the engine up. It's just a matter of when. Okay, want to get that out of the way. Also, if these goes into the intake port, make sure you seal the threads up with some sealer. If they protrude in the port, like say you can see them, then before you install the heads, get these on there, go ahead and grind them to where they actually fill in with the intake runner, and mark it on the outside of the head. Mark it with a line, a scribe, or something. Put the sealer on them, screw them back in, torque them down so that the line comes back around and lines up, and that way when you look down the intake runner, this will be ground out and fit your intake runner. Sometimes that's worth quite a bit of horsepower, sometimes it's not. Just depends on how bad the port is. All right, now basically there's a couple reasons why this is so important. Now here we have a stock big block push rod, okay? This one here, I don't remember which one it is, but the new ones I had to get are 8 inches 800 thousandths long, and these are 80 wall. These are 3/8 diameter, 5/16 radius, 80 wall push rod. These are not. These are very light, they're thin walled, and there is no way on this planet I would try and turn a ton of RPMs with that. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't turn a lot of RPMs with these. I mean, on a small block, I might turn them 7,000 or something, but if it's one of my high-end engines, it's going to be 7/16 or 135 wall stuff. 100% of the time, no questions asked. I will not use an 80 wall push rod on a high spring mechanical roller. I don't do it. And I don't care what videos are made on YouTube land where a guy says there's no gain in performance when I change push rods. Yes, there may not be in your application, but that's because you don't have enough power or enough valve spring or turning enough RPMs. If you put enough valve spring to it, these push rods will bend. They will pole vault. Now, I can't bend this obviously, right? But they would pole vault. Go boing, boing like that. And they flick the valve open and then it rebounds and smacks on the camshaft. I've actually seen it make horsepower when it's done correctly, but boy, that is playing Russian roulette. Now, I know this, but just so you know, every push rod is rated for so many pounds. So like, I can't remember them now. I got it wrote down over there and I don't have it in front of me. But some push rods are 800 pounds, some push rods are 1,100 pounds, some push rods are 1,500 pounds. And so I always go for the strongest push rod I can for perfect valve train rigidity. Now, if this was the push rod I had and I changed the camshaft, I'm doing a excuse me, I'm doing a bunch of builds. I got like 6 or 7 builds right here at one time, so the shop is a disaster. But this was a stock push rod, and when I changed the camshaft, the base circle was smaller, so I can get more lift. And now this push rod is too short. I know that because I stuck it in the engine, and the rockers don't line up. It doesn't work. And what I had was, because this is short, you have a contact patch on top of the valve that is about there. Everybody see that? And so then what can happen is, that's by the way on the base circle with the valve shut. And what can happen is, at max lift, if you lift it far enough, it can actually roll almost to the edge of the valve and near about come off. What that does is it side loads your valve stem, and it will wear the valve guides out bad. And on some occasions, if you have a titanium valve with a hardened tip, you can actually break the tip off the top of the valve, and then you've got this nice chunk of hardened steel floating through your engine. So bad idea. Hardened tip valves are great because they don't wear. The top of the valve won't mushroom. So if you buy a cheap valve and they're soft, the top of that valve will mushroom over time. And when you go to take the valve out, you can't. You got to grind the top of it off. I'm sure some of you have seen that. Now, what happens when we go to a really thin valve? So this is a lot of stuff I do normally. This is like 6 millimeter, okay, very small. And you can have such lift, like a lot of my stuff is 800 lift. Well, 800 lift on a valve that tiny, it ain't much room there. So we run a lash cap. And a lash cap basically is a precision ground little cap that goes right on top of the valve that evenly distributes the load better, and then I can get it set up dead center and have the ability for that roller wheel to roll across it like so. And let's see if I can do this so you can see better. When it rolls down, up, right? Down, up. If the valve is so small of diameter and you don't have enough surface area here, and let's say you're lifting at 800, 900 or even more, you can roll the thing right onto the edge and sometimes dislodge it. And this is where people don't pay attention to details, right? Details matter. I mean, they just matter. And you gotta take your time to set stuff up. But we've been doing this stuff, my gosh, I've been doing this 30 years, and they've been trying to race cars since the beginning of cars. So it's not like it's no secret, right? But it's important. It's very important to get this correct. Now, how do we do that with one of these? This is a Pushrod measuring tool, and I have a wide assortment of these things. They got sections in them. I've got some with cups. I mean, I've got some with larger ends on them. I have a wide section of these, wide assortment of those things. So with that tool, the Pushrod measuring tool, I knew that once I got the rocker arm sitting on the valve stem correctly, I went and measured it, and I knew it needed an 8.800 long pushrod. And because it's low spring pressure, low RPM, an 80 wall 3/8 pushrod was plenty strong enough for what this is going to do. I mean, more than strong enough, okay? This is just a street engine we're talking about at this time. Hydraulic roller, low RPM, you know, below 7,000, so it's not even a problem. This is more than strong enough with the spring pressure we'll have on it. Okay, now let's go to the engine and see how this works. Okay, so first things first, you always want to make sure that your lifters are on the base circle of the cam. And you can simply roll your engine around. There you go, you see the exhaust valve is opening right there, which means the intake will be right behind it. When that intake starts to shut, you know you're going to be on the base circle of both of them, and there you are. The intake is now closed. I'm physically making sure it is shut. Okay? At this point, you're now ready to apply your pushrod checker. So I think I grabbed the wrong one. I don't know if I did or not. But anyways, we're going to be using one of these. I'll stick it in there. I got my camera resituated. Hang on. Okay, hopefully that shows better. I'm going to stick this down in my guide plate, down in the lifter, and then the rocker arm will go on top. And again, we have verified that we are on the base circle, that the lifter is as far down as it can physically go. Once I get this thing adjusted right, I want you to watch now. Now you might think that I'm oversimplifying this, but I promise you I'm not, okay? This is a lot of years of doing this. But I can simply, when you got the pushrod length right, I can simply take this right here and wiggle it and watch what happens. How amazing is that? Look at there, dead center. Not very complicated, is it? Now, you don't believe that? Oh my gosh, did I put permanent marker on that? I did. Oh, I know how to get it off. Hang on. Color it and then wipe it off real quick. That makes it come off. Hey, look at there. Okay. I'll do it again for you. So we're going to color this Sometimes I use dry erase marker because it marks a lot easier. But I got my length correct. I'm going to put this on. By the way, on the rock arms, guys, always make sure you see that little cutaway in there. That's for this adjuster to set inside of. Make sure you always never install them like that with that part up. The recess spot face should be up, okay? So you see now I painted my valve stem. I've adjusted my push rod length checker. We're going to slide it on. We'll make sure it's all the way seated. I'm just going to wiggle it. Look at there. Isn't that amazing? No, it's just simple physics. I got this length correct. Now, on the contrary, let's put in the original push rod. And let me just see here what's the difference. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a mile long. We'll put this one in. Look at the difference. Now this push rod, oh, I got to back out for you. This push rod here, this is the factory one, okay? And it might be way too long even. Okay, it's in there. We're down the base circle, all we can go. And again, here just to show you the effects of the push rod length. Well, first, look down here. My stud is not even coming through the rocker, and that's all the way down, right? Let's mark this thing. Yeah, I let it dry. I'm sorry, guys. We'll fix it. Get that off of there. Paint it again. I might go get my dry erase marker. It's a lot easier. Oh, wow, I see it. It's on the very edge. It's on the very edge. Now, you talking about breaking a valve, son, that would break a valve. And I mean on startup. You don't need to go 500 miles. You'd break it as soon as you try and started it. All right, so let's go back to this checker. We'll do this right here. Here's my checker. I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to take this and screw these in quite a bit. Well, there we go. We'll put it back in there. And we'll repaint this. Wipe it off. We'll set this back on correctly. And let's give it a wait. Let's give it a wiggle. Oh yeah, I can see it, but I bet you can't. I'm going to get my dry erase marker. Now, okay, that's going to work a lot better. Okay, we're going to repaint this again. And I shortened that just so you know where we are. Okay. Can you see this? What? I can't hear you. What'd you say? Haha, I'm funny. Look how off-centered that is. See how it is now closer to the back side of the valve? All right. At max lift, and this cam I think is about a 610 lift cam, that's going to move. So what happens is your contact patch, because it starts out dead center, but because of the geometry and the motion of the valve, it's going to go like this. It's going to roll across the top of the valve. Not a lot, right? Not a lot, but if it's not centered as much as possible during the process, it makes your valve stem do this number right here. It rocks it. And what's happening if the valve is rocking? Because of pressure, right? If it's rocking, you're chewing up your valve guides. You will wear them out. And I have had them come in the shop with more than 10 thousandths play on an engine that wasn't a year old. No, it was not one I done, because I take my time and set stuff up correctly. What I'm trying to show you here is this is not rocket science. This is easy. This is one of the easiest things you'll do, but it's also one of the most neglected things because people just kind of willy-nilly take it for granted. All right, so we know that we're towards the back. We're going to unscrew this now. Let's just go to the one that I measured, right? Okay, so 8800. I think the 8800 one is your exhaust. And the 7850 for this engine is my intake. So let's put that in there. Get all this out of my hands. And we'll repaint this. I'm down, and I'm just going to move it side to side. Oh, dang it. It got oil on it. Gosh, man. You're messing with me now, motor. You're messing with me. It had a bunch of oil on the tip of the rocker where I set it down in the valley a while ago. There we go. And you can clearly see, I can anyways, right there is your mark right through the center. It still had oil on it. I'll do this one more time for you so you can make sure that you understand the process. Because I'm not done with this process. I'm going to show you some other things with it, so hang tight. See if I can blob that on. You can even rotate the wheel just a hair. And there you are. You can see it right there, dead center. Dead center. Now, what does that prove? Well, that proves that as far as with my base circle, the cam and the lifter is on the base circle, where the lifter is as low down as it's going to go. And with my rocker installed, that tells me, at least at this moment, that we are good, because you can't get no better than that, guys. All right, don't let anybody make you feel like it's not good, because guess what? You can't get no better than dead center of the valve, okay? Now, we're at zero lash, as you can see. And all I'm going to do, I'm just taking the lash out, and I'm going to roll the engine through. So, let's see. There we go, there's the intake valve. And I'm going to do it one more time. We can hear the air whooshing through the cylinder head. Now, we're going to take this off. And again, this is my width, and then we'll show you with the caliper here. So it's 620 lift with a 1.7 rocker. I've got about a 70, and this is eyeballing it, okay? We get real close for you, but I've got about a 74 thousandths wide travel motion. And that is from base circle with the valve all the way shut to max lift and back. That is your motion. Okay, so you're moving right through there. And you're only moving about 74 thousandths. Well, and then again, that's eyeballing it. So, with that being said, that's what is so critical, is you don't want your starting point here towards the back side. You don't want your starting point towards the front side. You want your starting point to be dead center. And listen, fight for it. Okay? Get a push rod, adjustable push rod, to get your clearances right. And if it looks off a little bit back here, towards the rear or towards the front, don't be settling with that. Adjust it till it's dead center of that valve. Dead center of the valve. Make sure you're on the base circle. No rise on the lifter whatsoever. Make sure your stud is long enough to engage the rocker completely. And let's look at that a moment. So with this setup, well, here I got one already. With this setup, you can see that I have 350 thousandths of threads sticking out. Okay. Now, no, that's not twice the diameter, but I don't need that much on this. Okay. What I do have is a ton of stud there to maintain this and have it last forever. The other original stud that was in this engine, this one is, again, was way too short, and let's see, where was it? Yeah, 375 longer is what it is. So right there is 375 thousandths, and that is the difference in length between this one and those, and that's all I needed to get a plenty of thread engagement on this stud. But trust me, guys, if you're only getting like this much thread engagement here, you see that good? That's not enough. That is not enough. Will it hold? Maybe. Are you wanting to risk it? What happens if a roller lifter comes out of the hole? Does anybody know? Especially if it's a retrofit. Let me just show you something. Let's see. Oh yeah, here, I got one right here. I've got these setup lifters I use. What happens if one of these lifters shoots out of the lifter bore? Bonk. What does this one do? What do you see right there? A wheel. Which way is that wheel designed to roll? This way. What's going to happen if it tries to roll that way? Instant destruction. It could stop the camshaft dead in its tracks, which would break your timing components, which would just destroy the engine, okay? So this does not need to come off. This does not need to be left unadjusted. It needs to be put on correctly with the right amount of threads. And this valve stem, your contact patch should be dead center. Absolutely dead center. Don't settle for less, okay? Now, the other thing is, going back to what I was talking about earlier, I don't know if I can get this angle right because this is so long. But this is a, well here, I know what we'll do. Let's just put this right here like so. This is probably one of the smallest race valves I'll use with any kind of spring pressure. Like I might put 300 pounds on this seat pressure. And I'll turn 110,000 or so, 9,500. This is 200 and basically 80 thousandths, basically. Okay. This one is 342, 342.5, 342. Big difference in these, right? Big difference. And what did we say? We had 74 thousandths basically rolling across the top of that valve. Look at this right here. This will help put it in perspective for you. I'm going to blow this up a little bit right there. And I want you to try and really see 74 thousandths with the lift and rocker ratio we have, being at 610 lift with a 1.7 rocker. This is how much you're going to have roll across the top of that valve. You see that? That ain't much room for forgiveness, is it? Because if you're here, you're going to break something eventually. If you're here, you're going to break something eventually. You need to be right there. And the only way that's going to work is if when the cam is on the base circle with everything in its lowest position, valve shut, you have a thin, dead center line across that valve. The other thing is, use a lash cap when you get this small. My advice, if you're below 11/32, let's say you start going to 8 and 7 millimeter and 6 millimeter, use a lash cap, please. Okay, now how do we do that? Easy. You just get locks like this. I try to use these on anything because they're easy, they're lightweight, they're very strong. But I'll use what Exeldyne calls a Super 7 or Super 8. These right here, because this is not that expensive of a build, these are called 10-degree locks. And what you'll notice is the inside of them has a recess in here. Okay, see that? That's because I can put a lash cap that's 80 thousandths thick right on top of that valve and give myself a platform that instead of being this, will be like this. Okay, big difference, and it's a lot more forgiving. However, if you center up your push rod on this tiny valve, and so right here I start talking about using a lash cap, and this is where I said some things that did not come out right. And here's what I want you to understand. When you're using a very small valve, such as in that case, I think that's a 6mm valve, and you're lifting, you have a lot of valve lift, a lot of spring pressure, high RPMs. It is extremely critical that your geometry is perfect. And with the lash cap, it gives you a little wider platform. Now I want to make sure you understand that when you use a lash cap, one of the biggest things is, number one, buying a cheap lash cap. All right, if you buy a cheap lash cap, sometimes they're not perfectly flat on the inside. And another thing is, when you run a lash cap, do you see the edge of the valve, how it's chamfered? That is critical, okay? You cannot put a corner in a corner. It is not possible. So you can slide the lash cap on a valve with sharp edges, but it's not going to sit on there right. And the lash cap will usually wind up cracking or breaking. And then people talk trash about them, but the bottom line is it was improperly installed. So when you use a lash cap, make sure you have a good chamfer on the top of the valve. Make sure you adjust your push rod length for the extra heights now. Most valve lash caps are around 80 thousandths thick, and you'll have great success. The other thing, again, I'm talking about racing with very small diameter valve stems, very high lift, high RPM, high spring pressure. Lash caps can be your friend. And you want to make sure you take the time to get that skinny little line dead center so that your push rod length is correct. And if you're running a shaft mount system like Jessel or T&D or others, they come with setup kits, and T&D and Jessel both have different kinds of setup kits, but just take the time. Now, also I've seen on some cylinder heads where you'll have intake valves that are taller than exhaust valves. Like, for example, a 18-degree Chevy head or something. It may come to me from some other place and somebody's already been working on it. And, well, how do you set up a shaft system with two different valve heights? Right? How's that work? So I don't do that. I hate doing that. I just think somebody didn't take the time to put the right valve in, or they're running lash caps on one valve and not the other. But it is absolutely critical that your valve tip heights are the same when you're running a shaft mounted rocker system. So, important notes. Make sure your valve stem heights are all the same if you're running shafts. And if you add a lash cap to the job, make sure you adjust your push rod, because anytime you change installed valve stem height, your push rod length will change. So I wanted to make sure I threw that in there because I didn't say it right in the video. And put a lash cap on, guess what? Center stays the same. Okay? The center will always be the same because you're lining up on center, not the edges. Always run a lash cap on little valves. And I'm talking about the diameter of the stem. Alright, so setting up a push rod and valve spring geometry, it's not complicated. Don't make it complicated, okay? But it is very important. And a lot of the mistakes I see when guys start dropping valves, it's because usually they didn't have the right spring. They did not have the right push rod. Or their valves were lined up as such, whether it was like this. This right here is the biggest problem. Everybody see that? That is your biggest problem. Now, what causes that? Guide plate misalignment when you're running a stud. Because your shaft system don't rarely ever have this issue. But these are the big issues with studs. Is sometimes I have to cut these. I just cut them with a cutoff tool, and I will move them to get it corrected and spot weld it in place, take it off the engine, and fully weld it. Sometimes I will have to open up these. Sometimes I'll have to move just one finger over just a hair bit, or one finger over this way just a hair bit, just to keep it from making my rocker arm offset. Because when it's offset, guys, whoo, that's dangerous. That is going to be drop a valve city right there. It needs to be dead center this way and dead center this way. It needs to form a perfect crosshair dead centeredness, right? Except for in this direction. Let's call this, this is the front, this is the back of the engine. So fore and aft, and we'll call this north and south just for this video. So north and south, fore and aft, it needs to be dead center. Okay? Critical. Get that right, you're going to have a nice happy valve train for a long time. What else? Thread engagement. Make sure you got plenty of it. Okay? Plenty of thread engagement is critical for it being solid. Secondly, this is something I see a lot of people not doing, is they'll run a high lift, high spring pressure deal on studs and they don't girdle them. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I girdle everything, and I have seen with heavy springs and stuff, the studs do that right there under spring pressure. So much spring pressure, you're literally making that thing rock in the head, and it's going to break or pull the threads. You're not getting your valve time. Your valve timing is out the window when that happens, because you have to move the valve further before the rocker arm actually moves the valve. You have to move the crank further before the rocker arm will move the valve because of the deflection. So it can close late, it can open late, close late, or open late, close early. It's just not going to be what it should be. By tying all this together, you've made it now one unit, and it's a whole lot stronger. When you put on a stud girdle, your valve lash will change. Guarantee it. So always set valve lash with the stud girdle installed. And if you buy a stud girdle, and let's say the girdle was going to go over your lock, your little poly lock here, for example. Let me move this one over for a second. When you run a girdle, you'll have tall poly locks. Let's say that it's offset like that. Well, you need to fix that. Don't force that stud over to fit that stupid, ill-machined stud girdle, okay? If it all lines up nice right here without the girdle, then make your girdle fit your head or go get another one, because you don't need to be forcing this over, because you can. You can bolt the two pieces together and bend that stud right on over, and now your rocker arm's over here like this. Trust me, I've seen it. So get a quality one that actually fits. Let's see what else. So when you get it right, a lot of times what you'll notice is you'll have this maybe perfect 90 degree with the rocker arm and the valve stem. It's very much an optical illusion. But more importantly to me is that your contact patch on the top of that valve is dead centered. Guys, that's everything. That is everything. Take the time to do it right. Take the time to research which push rod you should use. And when in doubt, get one that's stout. You heard it here from Salter Racing Engines. Details matter, guys. You want an engine to live at high RPMs? Put a strong push rod in. Put the proper valve spring in. Take the time to set it up correctly, and make sure you have enough thread engagement so that your poly locks don't even think about pulling threads. Alright guys, thanks a lot and have a great day.